2011 studies again. We're looking at the number 36 today, and the reason is because this is a number I've never really paid much attention to until I started looking in the book of Revelation, and the account of the woman who was bound by Satan for 18 years and Christ healed her. So that 2 times 18 obviously is 36. So that's one of the things we want to focus on. And wondering if this could be the length or duration of Satan's little season, or the whole duration of time, including the 8,400 days and the remaining time until a specific year. If that is what is being suggested, we have to look at that. And in both books I had a section for key Bible numbers that God assigns meaning to, and we've seen how 23 relates to judgment. So the 8,400 days was 23 years from 1988 to 2011. And then we saw how 84 related to the 840 months of Judah's captivity in Babylon, and how the book of Revelation speaks of Babylon the Great has fallen. So there's a correlation between this and the 84 months of, or 7 years, of Jacob's trouble. So of great tribulation. So we have these numbers that God assigns meaning to, and this focus is on 18 and 36, more so 36. Let's read the account of the woman who was bound for 18 years by Satan. Luke 13:10. And he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and behold, there was a woman which had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was bowed together, and could in no wise lift up herself. And when Jesus saw her, he called her to him, and said unto her, Woman, thou art loosed from thine infirmity. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight, and glorified God. And the ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation, because that Jesus had healed on the Sabbath day, and said unto the people, There are 6 days in which men ought to work, in them therefore come and be healed, and not on the Sabbath. Then the Lord answered him and said, Thou hypocrite, doth not each one of you on the Sabbath loose his oxen or his ass from the stall, and lead him away to watering? And ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan hath bound, lo, these 18 years, be loose from this bond on the Sabbath day? And when he had said these things, all of his adversaries were ashamed, and all the people rejoiced for all the glorious things that were done by him. Now in this account, the woman was bound by Satan 18 years and healed by Christ. Like I mentioned earlier, 18 is half of 36. And there's a good reason I'm focusing on 36, so stick with me on this. I'm just trying to establish how certain numbers can be assigned to the time that Satan can bind people. Now, when we looked in the Old Testament, we were looking at the number 30, or looking for the number 36, and if there's any correlation between anything that might be found there. We found that the Philistines in 1 Samuel 13, the Philistines had 30,000 horsemen and 6,000. No, I said that wrong. They had the number of the chariots were 30,000 and horsemen 6,000, for a total of 36,000. 36 times 1,000. So, and that was set up for battle. And they were, one of the things that really stood out in this account was the term oppressors. They were Israel's oppressors. And this is the account where Saul, I think it was in his second year, where Saul and Samuel had this encounter where Samuel was telling Saul what to do according to God's word, and Saul was supposed to come back in 7 days. Samuel was supposed to come back in 7 days, and the people sort of panicked and hid themselves in the rocks and dens, whatever, And Samuel got upset because Saul didn't follow the word of God. And this is really when Samuel had told Saul, your kingdom is going to be removed for you, and the man after God's own heart is going to be taken. That would have been David, King David, who is a picture of Christ. So we have this language in 1 Samuel where we can see the number 36. This is 1 Samuel 13:5. And the Philistines gathered themselves together to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. And they came up and pitched in Michmash toward eastward from Bethaven, which I believe is, Bethaven. House of Vanity. I'm pretty sure that's what that is. 1 Samuel 13:6, when the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, that's that key word there, then the people did hide themselves in the caves, in the thickets, in the rocks, in the high places, and in pits. The people were distressed. The Philistines had become their oppressors. This word is also used in association with Babylon and Satan, who is the king of Babylon. He's the great oppressor. Trying to make the connection between the 36,000 who are their oppressors and how Satan is also called the oppressor. Now this, in relation to the king of Babylon was a type of Satan, but you see this language, how he's called that. I think the king of Assyria is the same way. How he went through the land and said, who's going to protect you? Nobody's going to protect you. Your God won't protect you. And he was really boastful about it. Isaiah 14:1, for the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them, and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were. And there's a great reversal going on here. And they shall rule over their oppressors. There's that word. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from thy hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve, that thou shalt take up the proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how has the oppressor ceased? There's that word again, oppressor. The golden city ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest, and is quiet. They break forth unto singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, the cedars of Lebanon, saying, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no fowler is come up against us. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirred up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It has raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. And they spake and said unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? The pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen, O Lucifer? How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation, in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that did make the world as a wilderness, and destroy the cities thereof, that opened not the house of the prisoners? And the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house. But thou art cast out of the grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden underfoot. So we have this language here. Oh, let me read verse 22. For I will rise up against them, saith the Lord of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name, the remnant, the son and nephew, saith the Lord. Now we have this language of Satan typed as the king of Babylon being the oppressor, and we have the Philistines, which had an army of 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen for 36,000 total. They were the oppressors of Israel, and that number 36 is highlighted. Now we have to make a connection somehow with all this to try to show a timeline that this is possibly, 36 is possibly related to the time in which Satan has to destroy and to turn this world into a wilderness, including the houses of God, and as he comes with lying signs and wonders. So we are brought to the book of Revelation, Revelation 13, and I have to read this because if we don't read this, we're not going to understand how this whole scenario is all about the end, and with the lying signs and wonders and all that. Revelation 13. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him power, and his seat, Satan is the great dragon, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. I want to cover that, by the way, that phrase, the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. We'll do that in another study. It has to be a dedicated study for that. If any man hear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killed with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saint. And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doth great wonders, and he makes fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. What's most fascinating to me about this language is that, what John saw, he was seeing imagery of what would take place at the final days of history. And this whole thing about causing fire to come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. Many times I pointed to the YouTube video, is this fire from God? ? Because it's not. It's a whole nother spirit. It's the spirit of Antichrist, right in the midst of the congregation, as they are falling over backwards, and the man on stage is shouting fire on you. And 2 minutes into the video, as I mentioned before, he actually says, I am God. He says, I am God, just like that. And then he shouts, fire on you, and they're falling over. This type of fire is, whatever he saw, whatever John saw, whether it was literal fire or whatever he saw, is a representation of what that is, what that video shows. And it's an amazing thing. If you have not seen that video, is this fire from God? ? Exclamation point. Check it out on YouTube. So he does great wonders. Now these are lying signs and wonders that Satan does. And he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by the sword and did live. And he had the power to give life unto the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as should not worship the image of the beast should be killed. This reminds me a lot of what the king of Babylon did, as he erected his statue, and the dimensions of that statue did relate to 666. But this whole thing is an imagery of Satan acquiring worship with miracles and lying signs and wonders. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. I'll put a little bit of verses up here to show what that actually represents. It's the will of the person who wants to believe in these signs and wonders, lying signs and wonders, and these miracles. They're sort of sold out to the whole idea that they think that this is from God. And no man might buy or sell. Buying and selling has everything to do with false gospels, save he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Okay, after all that, we come to verse 13. Verse 18, Revelation 13, verse 18. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. Now that's what the King James translated it as. And his number is 666. We were brought to Revelation 13 because of the number 36 or 18. I believe Revelation 13 is a grand picture of the lying signs and wonders in our day, such as fire on you. And this seems to be the mantra for those performing this act. I've even seen banners at some of these big, huge banners, the fire of God or whatever. That fire is always incorporated into the whole terminology. We can get into the buying and selling aspect of how that represents other gospels. So we're at this point here where we're looking at 666. Here's the ISA rendering of this verse. Here the wisdom is, the one having the mind, let him calculate the number of the wild beast for... the way this is worded is it's a little bit weird. But you have to sort of reread it a couple times. The number of the wild beast number, for of human it is, and the number of it is 666. Now in the Old Testament, there's 3 men who were associated with 666, and a lot of people today will try to forecast that this man Antichrist is coming and he's in the future somehow. But yet there's 3 examples in the Old Testament which show certain parts of the whole 666 that show what happens at the end. So you don't have to look to the future, just look to the Old Testament. Now you have the picture of Goliath, who David slew, whose height was 6 cubits. He had 6 pieces of armor, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. That's 1 Samuel 17, 4-7. Nebuchadnezzar, whose image, which was set up, was 60 cubits high and 6 cubits broad. That's Daniel 3:1. And which was worshipped when the music was heard from 6 specific instruments. So there you have a 666 showing up there too. Let's see, the amount of gold brought to Solomon in a year in 1 year, I'm sorry, was 666. So you have that aspect of Solomon also. No, man was created on the sixth day, so 1/6 can be assigned to the human aspect of it, and 2/6 and even 3/6 can show total human domination of the earth by the king of this world, who is Satan. So you have this whole humanistic approach of man lifting himself up as God and showing these signs and wonders through the power of Satan. Now there does seem to be a connection of 36, oppression, with 666. Let's see, the factors of 666 are 2 times 3 times 3 times 37. That doesn't show 36 at all. However, if we add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way to 36, including 36, we have 666. That made me think of if this time frame is actually a 36-year period, from 1988 at the 13,000 year anniversary since creation, and then it carries on for 36 years, which includes the 2,300 years. I'm sorry, 23 years, 8,400 days. It also includes this longer period of time where we look, the last study we were looking at, go to the sea 7 times, when Elijah has told his servant, go to the sea and tell me what you see. Now this is after he prayed for no rain, so there's a 3.5 period of no rain, and this happened in his third year. So the servant went, he found nothing, and then Elijah told him, go 7 more times. And on the 7th time, he saw the cloud is the size of a fist. And he said, okay, we got to tell Ahab to get going to avoid the abundant rain that's going to fall. Now, we were trying to look at that and say, well, is that possible that 3.5 years past 2011, where all these people are talking about no more salvation, God sending a famine in the land, and they are pretty much saying salvation was wrapped up in 2011, which it wasn't. Past 2011 would be 2014, and they're still teaching this today, so we still have a few more years before we actually reach the 10-year mark, which would be 2021. Now that's when the rain season would come. That's when 7 years past 2014, 7 times go to the sea, and we're counting down to that period of time when the rain begins, where the husbandman, who is God, he waits, the farmer who waits for the vine dresser, who waits for the precious fruit of the earth to come forth, and he waits for the early and latter rain. Now, we could have had a period of the early rain during the 8,400 days when we hit 1994. And then the latter rain would be in this time that we're living, when we hit the end part of the 36, the end of the 36 years, from 2011 to 2024. So, but backing up to 2021, we have the period of rain, and then for 3.5 years, there's that period of consume and destroy of Satan's kingdom, which is very possible too, because once the rain begins and the precious fruit of the earth comes forth, that's when God is taking over this whole thing, and believers do consume and destroy the kingdom of Satan until the end, as the book of Daniel says. So this number 36 seems significant. 6 times 6, and we have to look at this more. There might be more aspects to this. If this is a possibility of Satan's little season. And it is also 36 is 2 times 18. So, God could be doubling this 18 years, and when he doubles something, then it's surely going to come to pass. So, again, to recap, 1988 to 2024 is 36 years, and 10 years past 2011 would have been 2021, and we looked at that having the first 3.5 years of no rain, and then there was 7 more years which we had to come to 2021, and then finally the rain begins, and that could have been historically shown by Elijah running before Ahab and beating him to Jezreel. So that's the study today. This is all a possibility, as we're looking at this as a possibility, because that number 666, there has to be some connection with the miracles, the false miracles, the false lying signs and wonders, to that number 666. And you have the woman being bound for 18 years. Well, you have this doubling to 36 years. It's possible that Satan has been able to bind people in this blindness, this deceiving that goes on, as Thessalonians talks about. As Satan lifts himself up, he lifts himself up to be God. And it's one of those things where it's like, man, we've witnessed this for quite a number of years now, but this could be the reason it's gone on for so long. That there's a 36-year period from the 13,000 year anniversary since creation in 1988 right up until 2024. And then we back up 3.5 years, and we land on the time of latter rain, which the precious fruits of the earth come forth. And we looked at that word precious before and how it relates to the precious blood of Christ and salvation itself. So it is all about salvation, that God, as we learned in 2 Peter 3, that God is long-suffering, not willing that any would perish, for the sake of the elect. And we have to endure during this time. So if that's what God has laid out, that's what he's laid out. Now this is a possibility. That's all we're saying here. But it might be a reason why that, we're going to be looking a little bit too. I was going to talk about this a little bit, but I'll talk about it next time. We're going to be looking too at how the day of the Lord mentioned in Joel. That's something that it mentions it, but the midsection on seems to almost be a prelude to the day of the Lord, now that I reread that again. And it could be that the day of the Lord doesn't start until God does these great reversals, and these great reversals could very well relate to the precious fruit of the earth coming forth as reverses things. And be not afraid, O land, God will do great things. So even though that Joel 2 opens up with the day of the Lord, the language of the day of the Lord, it's one of those things where you reread something, you go back to the source, you keep looking, and you realize, okay, Joel 2 talks about the day of the Lord in the opening, and then he talks about it at the end of Joel, after God reverses things, after the time that the great reversal happens. So we're going to look at that more. We're going to look at the day of the Lord more, because it's a significant event for this world. It's not something that's just minor. It's major. It's very major. So until next time, God bless you. My email is 2011studies@gmail.com, and you can ask questions or make comments, whatever. Thank you for the comments that have been made in the last week. Appreciate it. God bless.